Hey there, English learners. Imagine you're in the middle of a conversation in English. You're chatting away, and suddenly you realize something: you're not translating words from your native language into English anymore. You just know what to say. Well, this is what it's like when you train your brain to think directly in English. If you're tired of feeling stuck while you speak and always pausing to translate, then stick around, because today, we're diving into how you can start thinking in English, just like a native speaker. Are you ready to start speaking more fluently and confidently? Let's jump in. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation where you just couldn't get the right words in time? Or worse, you've had to pause mid-sentence and awkwardly scramble for the translation in your head. That's frustrating, isn't it? I bet you've experienced it at least once, the moment when you know what you want to say, but your mind just doesn't have the right words. It's like there's a roadblock in your brain. The worst part is the frustration that follows. You lose your confidence, and you feel like you're not improving, no matter how much you practice. But here's the exciting part. You can eliminate those awkward pauses completely. If you train your brain to think directly in English, you will never experience those frustrating moments again. Not only will this make you feel more confident in conversations, but it will also speed up your fluency significantly. Trust me, once you master this skill, thinking in English becomes second nature. And the best part, you won't even have to stop and translate from your native language in your head anymore. When I first started learning English, I did exactly what you're probably doing, translating everything in my head. I'd listen to a conversation and immediately try to convert everything into my native language. It worked at first, but after a while, I realized it wasn't a long-term solution. The reason our brains can only handle so much information at once. When you translate, you're juggling two languages, and that slows things down. It's like trying to multitask. We all know it's not as efficient as we think. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're trying to hold a conversation, and your brain is switching back and forth between English and your native language. You'll notice that the more you translate, the more mentally drained you get. This process takes time, and eventually, it prevents you from being able to speak quickly or fluently. It's like running on a treadmill. You're moving, but you're not getting anywhere fast. So, what's the solution to this? The answer lies in immersion and repetition. The more you immerse yourself in English, the more your brain will naturally switch over to thinking in English. At first, it may feel like a challenge, but with time, you'll find yourself thinking in English without even realizing it. The key to fluency is making this shift as quickly as possible. This isn't just about memorizing vocabulary, it's about rewiring your brain to process English naturally. The power of thinking in English. Why is thinking directly in English so important? The truth is, when you stop translating and start thinking in English, everything becomes smoother. Your mind stops jumping back and forth between languages, and your speech becomes faster, more fluid, and far more natural. You don't just learn words, you internalize them. They become part of your daily thought process. Imagine this: you're talking to someone in English, and instead of pausing to find the translation of a word, your brain automatically finds the right word in English. It's like a light bulb turning on. You don't even have to think about it, the words just come out. This is the magic of thinking in English, and it's the key to becoming fluent. When you translate in your head, you're holding on to a crutch. And just like any crutch, the longer you rely on it, the harder it becomes to walk without it. Once you start thinking in English, you'll find that those pauses to search for words vanish. You won't have to stop and think about each phrase. Everything will flow naturally. This process is like switching gears. The faster you make the transition, the more your brain will be trained to think in English automatically. Imagine how much more confident and fluid you'll feel when you don't have to stop and search for the translation in your head. The more you practice, the more natural this becomes. The practice of thinking in single words. When you start thinking in English, a powerful way to kick things off is by focusing on single words. It might sound simple, but this method helps lay the foundation for fluency. Here's a fun and easy exercise. Take a moment to look around you right now and try to name 5 things you see in English. For instance, you might say window, book, phone, desk, or lamp. That's it. You're already thinking in English. But what if you don't know the exact word for something you see? Don't worry. Instead of freezing up or getting frustrated, simply describe it in English. For example, if you see a piece of furniture and you don't know what to call it, describe it like this. It's the thing you sit on. Even though you're not using the exact word, your brain is still processing the description in English. This is a great way to keep your thought process going, and it builds a habit of staying immersed in the language. Why this exercise works. This exercise may seem simple, but it's incredibly effective for several reasons. First, it keeps your brain actively engaged in the learning process. The more you practice, the more your brain becomes accustomed to processing the world around you in English. You're constantly asking yourself, what is that called in English? This repetition helps you remember words better and faster. Second, it makes you more adaptable. When you don't know the exact word for something, describing it helps you expand your vocabulary. Over time, your brain will learn to find the right words more quickly. It's a skill you develop over time, and the more you describe things, the better your brain gets at finding the perfect word. Let's say you're at home and you notice an object you don't know the word for, such as a small kitchen gadget. Instead of feeling stuck, you can describe it as the tool used to blend food. Over time, you'll remember that it's called a blender. Even though you didn't know the word immediately, you kept the flow of thinking in English going. This is the kind of mental flexibility that leads to fluency. It also helps you learn new words naturally and without stress. So, don't stress if you don't know every word at first. The more you practice thinking in English, even when you don't know the exact word, the faster you'll improve. The key is to keep going and stay engaged with the language. Over time, you'll notice that your vocabulary grows, and your ability to think in English will feel more natural as you become more comfortable thinking in single words. The next step is to challenge yourself to build full sentences. It's one thing to recognize a word in English, but the goal is to be able to string those words together into coherent thoughts. At first, you can start by thinking simple sentences about what you're doing or what you observe. For example, if you're sitting at your desk, you could think to yourself, I am sitting at my desk, or I am working on my computer. If you're reading a book, try thinking, I am reading a book, or the book is interesting. These sentences don't need to be perfect, and you don't need to worry about grammar right away. The purpose here is to start forming thoughts in English, which will help train your brain to think in the language without the need for translation. When you begin this practice, it's completely normal to feel a bit awkward. Your thoughts may jump back and forth between English and your native language, and you might second-guess yourself. That's part of the process. I remember when I first started doing this exercise, it felt strange and a bit unnatural. I found myself hesitating, wondering if the sentence I was forming in my head was correct. But over time, that awkwardness fades. Eventually, thinking in English becomes a habit, and you no longer have to pause to think about how to form sentences. I vividly remember when I first started trying to think in English. At first, it was challenging. My thoughts would jump from English to my native language, and I would often catch myself trying to translate before speaking. It felt like I was constantly moving between two worlds. Sometimes, I'd second-guess myself and think, wait, am I saying this right? But as I continued practicing, I noticed that the more I stuck with it, the easier it became. Over time, the awkwardness disappeared. Today, thinking in English is so natural that it actually feels strange when I try to think in my native language. It's like I've rewired my brain to prioritize English thoughts. And let me tell you, when that happens, everything flows better. Your speech becomes quicker, and you feel more confident because you're not constantly searching for the right words. The key to this practice is consistency. The more you practice thinking in English every day, the more automatic it becomes. Eventually, your brain will start to form sentences without you having to consciously force it. It will become as natural as speaking in your first language. Thinking in English doesn't just apply to the present moment. To truly immerse yourself, you need to practice thinking about the past and future as well. This might seem a bit more complicated at first, but don't worry. With consistent practice, it becomes much easier. Let's start with future actions. When you're thinking about what you plan to do later in the day, try using the future tense. For instance, if you're planning to cook dinner, say to yourself, I'm going to cook dinner tonight, or I will make pasta for dinner. These simple phrases help you practice future tense in a natural way. You don't have to use complex sentences or worry about perfect grammar at first. Just practice thinking about your plans in English. The same goes for past actions. Reflecting on what you've already done is another great way to practice. For example, if you just had lunch, you could say, I had lunch an hour ago, or I went for a walk this morning. You don't need to be perfect. The goal is simply to reflect on your day in English. If you make a mistake, that's okay. The most important thing is to keep practicing. The key here is to get used to thinking about events in different tenses, both past and future. The more you practice, the quicker your brain will switch between these tenses without needing translation. Plus, this practice helps you build a more complete understanding of English grammar. As you describe actions in the past, present, and future, you'll naturally begin to understand how the tenses fit together. For instance, when I first started trying to think in English about past and future events, it felt a bit tricky. I would pause and think, how do I say that in the past tense? How do I describe what I'm going to do later? But over time, it got easier. Now, I can quickly shift between talking about things I've done, things I am doing now, and things I plan to do. Remember, even if you're not always sure about the exact grammar or tense, the practice itself is what counts. The more you do it, the more confident you'll become. Eventually, you won't have to think about which tense to use. Your brain will simply know the right one to use for any situation. The journey to thinking in English starts with small steps, but those steps quickly add up. By practicing single words, then sentences, and expanding to describing your past and future, you're laying the groundwork for fluency. It might feel challenging at first, but the more you immerse yourself in English, the easier and more natural it will become. Remember, the goal is consistency. Keep practicing every day. And before you know it, thinking in English will feel as natural as thinking in your first language. As you continue practicing, try to make thinking in English part of your daily routine. Describe what you're doing. reflect on your past activities, and think about your future plans. Stay patient, stay consistent, and remember that every bit of practice helps you get closer to fluency. In today's digital world, there are countless tools that can make your journey of thinking in English much easier. Flashcards, language learning apps, and online platforms are some of the most effective resources at your disposal. However, it's important to remember that simply using these tools passively won't help you improve as quickly. To truly benefit from technology, you need to engage with these tools actively. For instance, flashcards are a great way to build your vocabulary and reinforce what you've learned. But don't just write down the word on one side and its translation on the other. Instead, write a sentence on the reverse side of the flashcard, using the word in context. This method doesn't just help you memorize vocabulary, it also strengthens your grammar. For example, if you're learning the word apple, a flashcard might have apple on one side and a sentence like, I am eating an apple right now on the other. By practicing the word in context, you're teaching yourself how to use the word correctly in sentences, making it more likely that you'll remember and correctly use it in future conversations. Beyond flashcards, language learning apps like Duolingo and Babbel are fantastic resources that leverage repetition to help new words stick. These apps provide an engaging way to learn, as they incorporate fun activities and challenges to keep you motivated. The repetitive nature of these apps is a key component of their effectiveness. Repetition is a proven technique for reinforcing memory, and by using apps that offer consistent daily practice, you'll be able to internalize English vocabulary and grammar without even realizing it. However, it's crucial not to use these apps passively. As you go through exercises, make sure you're fully engaged. If you don't understand a word or concept, take the time to look it up in a dictionary or a translation tool to deepen your understanding. Engaging with the app, rather than just clicking through, will help cement the knowledge in your mind and improve your retention. Additionally, consider setting daily practice goals. Even a short 5 to 10-minute session a day can make a big difference over time. By incorporating these tools into your daily routine, you'll be able to consistently expose yourself to English, making the language a regular part of your life. Technology can be a powerful ally in your language learning journey, but it's up to you to take full advantage of it. One of the most important skills for mastering a language is practicing speaking. But many learners struggle with this because they don't have a partner to practice with. The good news is that you don't need a conversation partner to practice. You can do it with yourself. At first, talking to yourself in English might feel a little awkward. You may think, why would I talk to myself? But trust me, it's one of the best ways to reinforce what you've learned. Imagine you're having a conversation with a friend. Pretend you're at a cafe ordering food or asking for directions. Think about how you would express yourself in those situations and say it aloud. If you're cooking dinner, for example, you might say, I am chopping the vegetables, and I'm going to make pasta tonight. If you're traveling, you could imagine yourself asking, excuse me, where is the nearest train station? This kind of practice has several benefits. First, it helps you become more comfortable with speaking English. When you speak aloud, you activate different parts of your brain, making it easier for you to remember words and phrases. Second, it allows you to practice various situations that you might encounter in real life. The more you practice these scenarios, the more confident you'll feel when you encounter them in the future. It might feel a bit strange at first, but remember, this is a safe and effective way to practice without the fear of judgment. You can make mistakes, and that's okay. The goal here is not to be perfect. It's to become more confident and familiar with using English in everyday situations. As you continue to practice speaking to yourself, you can add complexity to your imaginary conversations. Start by describing what you're doing. Then move on to more complex scenarios where you have to respond to different questions or express more detailed thoughts. The more you do this, the more natural it will feel. And you'll soon find that speaking in English becomes easier and more automatic. You've probably heard it before, but consistency is absolutely crucial when learning any new skill, and language learning is no exception. You might be wondering, how long will it take to think in English naturally? The answer isn't the same for everyone. But the truth is, the more you practice, the faster you'll get there. Don't get discouraged if it takes time. Just like learning to ride a bike or playing a musical instrument, it takes regular practice to develop fluency. Some people might begin thinking in English after a few months of consistent practice, while for others, it might take a bit longer. The key is not to compare your progress to others, but to focus on your own journey. Even if you only have 5 minutes a day to practice, that's still progress. Set aside a specific time each day, whether it's in the morning, during lunch, or before bed, to dedicate to practicing English. Use this time to review flashcards, talk to yourself, or try writing short sentences. Every small effort you put into learning English adds up over time, and before you know it, you'll notice significant improvement. It's also important to remember that language learning isn't always linear. You may hit plateaus or experience moments of frustration, but don't let that discourage you. The most successful language learners are those who continue practicing every day, even when things feel challenging. If you push through those tough moments, you'll come out stronger and more confident. So, commit to practicing consistently. Even if it's just for a few minutes each day, over time, you'll see improvement. And one day, you'll realize that you've naturally started thinking in English without even trying. Congratulations! You've made it through some of the key strategies for learning how to think in English. Now you have the tools and the mindset to start improving your fluency. Remember, this journey isn't about perfection. It's about making progress every day. The most important thing you can do is to keep practicing. Use technology. Have conversations even with yourself. And commit to being consistent. Every time you practice, you're one step closer to mastering English. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They are an essential part of the learning process. The more mistakes you make, the more you'll learn, and the faster you'll improve. I'd love to hear how you plan to incorporate these techniques into your routine. What's your favorite method for thinking in English? Leave a comment below to share your progress and thoughts. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tips and tricks on language learning. Let's continue this journey together. Keep practicing. Stay consistent. And before you know it, thinking in English will become second nature to you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.